Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mok-yeon. With President Lee Jae Myung set to hold back-to-back summits with the U.S. and Japan, this week is shaping up to be a critical turning point in Korea's economic diplomacy. And at the center of it all, tariff negotiations, a multi-billion-dollar investment fund, and growing pressure from Washington for Seoul to take on more strategic burdens. On Japan's front, optimism over renewed shuttle diplomacy is being tempered by unresolved historical disputes and political instability within Tokyo. All of this unfolds as business leaders join the president abroad with Korea's trade, tech, and investment agenda under close watch. To explore more on this, we invite Sung Soo Eric Kim, founder and CEO of Datacrunch Global and Adjunct Professor at Yonsei Graduate School of Business. A big welcome.
Thank you for having me today.
And also joining us is Han-Hyung Lee, Assistant Professor of Economics at Montclair State University. Good to see you, Professor.
Thanks for having me on again.
So let's start our discussion right away with Professor Kim. So with the South Korea-U.S. summit approaching, the presidential office is still working to finalize the detailed agenda. What are your expectations for the core economic topics to be addressed?
So I think this summit is really important. Minister of Foreign Affairs Jo Hyun just flew to U.S. Amid facing a Korea-Japan summit on the 23rd. So he's not attending the Korea-Japan summit and went to U.S. to discuss about the Korea-U.S. summit. So that signals that there are very, important issues going on right now between Korea and U.S. And that also symbolizes how much this summit is very important for Korea in terms of negotiating and finalizing the deals with the United States. The previous agreement, which was made just last month and this month, was MASCA, making America citizens great again. So in that stance, our president is visiting Philadelphia, which Hanwha acquired a Philadelphia shipmaking company. So that will be symbolic to the Korea-U.S. cooperation this time. We have a lot of discussions that should be made at corporate level and also at national level for U.S.-Korea cooperation this time.
Right. So with Seoul's foreign minister visiting the U.S. today, it seems a lot of important topics are yet to be discussed in the summit. Now, President Lee Jae Myung is traveling to the U.S. with a high-profile business delegation as the tariff deal enters its final stage. He also called for a one-team mindset during his meeting with Korean corporate leaders. Professor Lee, how crucial is the role of these companies in this latest visit?
Well, it's quite crucial as to the fact that these high-profile officials and as well as the leaders are coming into the United States together with President Lee. It is clear from President Trump's perspective that the United States wants to bring back manufacturing to the country, and the role of the foreign companies such as Samsung and Hyundai in these investment projects is going to be quite crucial, especially in the fact that foreign companies like Samsung and Hyundai are going to bring more investment back to Republican-strong states, and the fact that they can bring more manufacturing jobs, it's going to be probably the most important leverage that Korea has over the United States, and also the United States wants that, and so it's going to be the crucial deal in terms of this summit. Now, when it comes to the idea behind this one-team mindset, while it is crucial for that the companies and the South Korean government have both the same alignment in terms of what they are going to bring to the table, I think that it also means that the Korean government has to give Korean firms unilateral support given the one-team mindset. It means regulatory predictions and how they're going to navigate through the challenging times and uncertain eras.
Right, so it definitely seems to signal alignment between the government and businesses at this point. Now, during the meeting with business leaders, several top CEOs from Samsung to Celltrion has emphasized job creation, startup investment, and high-value industries there. Professor Kim, what are the chances for these corporate promises to turn into actual tangible outcomes in the American market?
So I think that it should be materialized because this is very important, summit. And the reason why we're bringing all of our business leaders is that we want a concrete, tangible outcome out of this. If you look at the other side of the current, struggle between the United States and Korea over the tariffs and U.S. Demanding Korea for more active investment and more active role in the Korea-U.S. economic cooperation, we can look at as an opportunity to enter the U.S. market. So U.S. is opening up the market for us to invest and to build the future together. So we can also ask for deregulation in these situations for a more smoother landing into the U.S. market. So we should see a lot of mutual agreements here in terms of the investment package that we will deliver to U.S., but also at the same time, we need assurance of deregulation and a business-friendly environment in the United States for the Korean companies to excel in the U.S. business environments. So these initiatives are not a bilateral initiative. It should be a unilateral initiative, which we have to find a win-win situation, which we will ask for deregulation.
Right. So the execution of these promises through dialogue with Washington would be very important moving forward. Now, following the latest tariff deal with Washington, we are looking ahead to the $350 billion investment fund, which is still kind of under negotiation. Professor Lee, what should Korean companies be demanding in return to ensure this initiative doesn't become a one-sided political trophy?
Well, first of all, it is unclear who the Korean firms can go to for these demands. Suppose that Korean firms go to the South Korean government, and it's unclear whether or not the South Korean government is able to have a more negotiation power against the, let's say, the United States counterpart. I think what's important here is that these firms, especially the firms that are investing a large portion of their capital assets and capital expenditures for over the next few years, they want to guarantee that there's going to be a certainty of support. And that could be a regulatory or there could be a tax provision code where for the next 5 or 6 or 7 years down the road, they're able to receive those benefits as promised. Keep in mind that these investment pledges and commitments are going to be realized in maybe in 2033 or 2034. So that's a few years down the road. So there's going to be some changes in administrations in the United States and also in Korea, but the companies will be faced with the same constraints, the commitment they made this year. So for them, there has to be some kind of seamless transition between their investment commitments and actual realization in the states of the United States that include state-level cooperations as well as federal-level initiatives such as seamless work visa permits and a lot of facilitations of the workers moving from Korea to the United States, as they can also take some time. At the end of the day, what's really important is the policy certainty and guidance from both governments.
Right. So a lot of complex variables to consider, and Korean firm must be able to weigh in both long and short-term leverages. Now that the U.S. has implemented steep new tariffs on 407 steel and aluminum derivative products, Professor Kim, what are the main challenges Korean exporters would face, and what kind of short-term and long-term strategies could be helpful?
So this has been an ongoing problem, and the main reason is because of the overproduction of Chinese steel companies, so that the global steel prices pretty much, low. Like other countries cannot compete with Chinese steel manufacturers. So that's the reason why the U.S. is trying to control the markets. They already have a quota against Korean steel companies, so this issue has been going on for some time. But now, this time, they're also, will put regulations and new tariffs on the derivatives of steel and aluminum products, which means that the aluminum and steel products that are used for automobiles and white goods, such as refrigerators, are also going to be targeted. The estimate is that, our exports of these derivatives are about $11.9 billion annually. So it's going to hit our economy pretty hard if these tariffs are imposed. So this also has to be addressed as a package conversation during the summit of how to deregulate the regulatory stances of the United States so that our companies can more actively participate and invest in the U.S. market. So that will be the immediate discussion that should proceed. And in a long-term discussion, we will also have to discuss of how to co-manage these kind of supply chain issues with the United States as an economic partner.
Right. So focusing on deregulation and co-balancing supply chain regulations would be very helpful. Now, Korea was notably excluded from tariff exemptions that the U.S. granted to Japan and the EU in this latest fund. Professor Lee, what exemptions are we talking about? Could you explain for us? And why is Korea falling behind in these negotiations and exemptions?
I believe you're referring to the tariff stacking, which means that it's going to be a tariff rate, which is 15% unilaterally across the Japan, Korea, and EU, and that's going to be stacked on top of the existing tariff. For example, if a product was receiving a 10% tariff, but now with this 15% rule, I think there's going to be 10 plus 15, which is a total of 25% tariff. But there was some misunderstanding, especially from the announcement from the White House, and a trade negotiator from Japan had to visit the United States again a few weeks ago, and they have to sort that out. And eventually they worked out this plan where it's going to be 15% tariff rate across all products, and also the same case for the EU. And now, I don't think that Korea is falling behind in tariff negotiation. Instead, I think there's going to be some time that needs where both countries, meaning the South Korea and the United States, are going to clear out these negotiations. Again, all of these things are negotiation frameworks, and the summit that's going to happen next week is going to be the pivotal point where we're going to get more clarity on these issues.
Right, and that could be a part of the reason why our foreign minister actually went to the U.S. Today. Now, just yesterday, reports said that the U.S. is considering taking equity stakes in chip makers, including Samsung, in return for CHIPS Act subsidies. Professor Kim, what kind of precedent does this set in government-corporate relations, and how might firms respond to that kind of condition?
So the intention is very similar to what Biden has set up as a CHIP Act. The intention is to have the U.S. control the semiconductor market, at least for the national interest of the United States. So that was the reason why Biden gave out subsidiaries to Korean semiconductor companies and also U.S. companies and Taiwanese companies to come to U.S. to build factories so that they can have the semiconductors supplied more stably. Semiconductors are very important. It's not only used for commercial use and industry use, but it's also used for defense use. If you do not have semiconductors, the core, weapon system of the United States do not function. So it's very important for the United States to have interest in the semiconductor industry. But yesterday's news was a little bit surprising because mostly Lutnick, Secretary of Commerce, was suggesting that they would take 10% of Intel's shares for the $10.9 billion subsidiary the U.S. government has paid to Intel. The logic is that because U.S. government has provided subsidiaries to these semiconductor industries, the citizens of the United States should take dividends for the proceedings of the profits that these semiconductor companies make. Now they're requiring that to Samsung, SK Hynix, and TSMC. If you look at the subsidiary that was agreed to Samsung Electronics, it's about $4.7 billion US. That would be equivalent to about 1.56% of Samsung Electronics' total share. Jae Lee, the president, has 1.65%, so that would be almost equivalent to Jae Lee's shareholdings in Samsung Electronics. Although U.S. do not address intentions to have voting rights, and this, share will be a significant stake in the Korean companies and also to Taiwanese companies. But I think that it's a little bit difficult for this agreement to proceed, because if you even look at Taiwan, TSMC cannot accept this agreement. Cannot accept this suggestion because the Taiwanese government will veto on this. And I think that our government will also have a strong veto on this. So this is the point that the Korean government and Korean companies should have a close alignment and cooperation to negotiate with the United States in these kind of a little bit odd offers.
Right, it was indeed surprising, and equity demands tied to subsidies could actually reset the rules for state market relations globally. Now let's go beyond tariffs. Washington is pushing Seoul to contribute more towards alliance modernization, from higher defense costs to expanded military roles. Professor Lee, what kind of spillover effect could this have on South Korea's economies?
Well, it could have first of all, the spillover effect to some of the deals that we're talking about so far. Professor Kim mentioned some of the takeover from the United States in terms of the ownership of the profits that are going to be made in the United States. Now, some of those talks will be affected by the national security purposes that you mentioned with the modernization of the alliances, especially the U.S. Army in Korea and also in the region. At the same time, it could also lead to some of the more investment pledges from South Korean firms as a result of this demand, where the U.S. is making more demand for this share of the Korean government in terms of the defense spending. And now here, the South Korean firms can also pledge more investment projects so that they can offset and balance out these issues. At the end of the day, I think the United States have a quite clear goal that the deal has to be made in terms of bringing more investment and manufacturing into the United States. And South Korea has the leverage in terms of bringing in more people as well as capital to the United States. So I think it's going to be a very interesting outcome where both countries, South Korea and US, are going to look at this and how to make it more of a comprehensive deal, including the economic security as well as the national security.
Right. It will be one of the main topics that we're going to look forward to during the dialogue between the two countries. Now, let's also turn to Japan. Its internal political turmoil is growing, with pressure on Prime Minister Ishiba to step down. Professor Kim, do you think this instability within could derail any real progress on economic cooperation between Seoul and Tokyo?
So Prime Minister Ishiba lost the House of Councillors election just recently. They could not acquire the majority of the House. So he's on really weak political grounds right now. And a lot of speculation is that he will sometime in the near future step down because of the political pressure. So the discussion that we make with Ishiba would be, I think, more on a symbolic discussion. We cannot really expect that the Ishiba administration will stay for the majority of President Lee's administration and when he is in power. So we will have to make a symbolic discussion with Japan. And I don't think that Japan will be really hard in this discussion during the summit, because Ishiba and Japan also needs a lot of cooperation from Korea and the surrounding countries to overcome the slow-growing economic situation and also the geopolitical situation that Japan is facing in the East Asian region. So the summit will be more symbolic and I think more a normative agreement. So, and Korea will be more focusing on the U.S. summit rather than the Korea-Japan summit at this stage of the discussion.
Well, we also want to hear Professor Lee's opinion on that. South Korea and Japan still has a lot of historical dispute that has yet to be resolved. Do you think Seoul and Tokyo could realistically build deeper progress in terms of economic cooperation?
Yes, I think it's possible that the two countries can come together in this new era. If you recall, earlier this week is the anniversary of the trilateral summit between the United States, Japan, and Korea. And although the leaders of those three nations have changed since the last time the three countries met in Camp David, I think the spirit still remains, which is that Korea and Japan need each other in terms of economic security of moving forward, especially dealing with the United States. I think here, the both countries, meaning Korea and Japan, are looking at this as more of a survivability of the nations and for the future prospect and outlook for the economic security. And that's because Korea and Japan are the most important trade partners and investment partners for the United States. So I think it's quite clear that the cooperations between the two countries are needed in order to make sure that they can navigate through this unprecedented time. Now, if you recall from the Liberation Day speech from President Lee, he made quite clear that there's going to be some discussions of the past and the future. And it's quite remarkable that Lee is visiting Japan this weekend and also visiting the United States the very following Monday. So this shows a strong collaborations between the two countries as well as the potential future for the three-country dialogue.
Right. So though there are still historical disputes left, it would be a crucial time for the two countries to cooperate, especially in the aftermath of President Trump's tariff policies. And we'll have to keep close tabs on that. But as for now, we'll have to conclude our discussion here. Thank you so much for your time and for your insights tonight, Professor Lee.
Thank you.
And Professor Kim, we really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.